Jen Mall, and welcome to Nurse Connect. I am an RN and a board certified nurse coach. I believe that connecting with others is essential to living a happy and fulfilled life, and that sharing our stories not only helps us to heal ourselves, but also helps others by inspiring hope and optimism. I am so grateful to share stories of these incredible nurses on their journey, and I encourage you to find a way to share yours too. Thanks for listening in. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Nurse Connect podcast. I'm Jen Ball, and I am very excited. I feel like I always say I'm very excited, but I'm very excited to have Amanda Johnsen, who has been my co-instructor, my coach, my mentor, my friend for the last 18 months now, which feels like a lifetime and yet a blink of an eye. So thank you for being on today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. It is a true honor and privilege. And yeah, 18 months. It does seem like so short, but so fast at the same time. Like I feel like I've known you forever. And so when you say 18 months, in a good way, like I
Yeah.
love like that deep connection, right? So I look at them like, 18 months. Wow. Awesome.
I know. It's amazing. Amazing. So we're here for you. So why don't you take us back? How did you become a nurse, and what's kind of been your journey along the way?
Yeah. Okay. So, I became a nurse because when I was a kid, I got injured when I was 10 years old, and I spent 2 weeks in the hospital at Christmas.
Mm,
And I fell in love with the healthcare system.
wow.
So I knew from 10 that I was going to be working in the healthcare system in some way, shape, or form. My plan all along was to be a surgeon.
Mm,
So I was always intrigued by the body, intrigued by healing and caring for people.
hmm.
So it started way when I was younger. And then as I grew up and I went to school, I was quickly like, well, I need to get to work as soon as possible to make
Yeah.
money. To become a doctor, I have to go to school for another 10 years. So let's become a nurse and kind of navigate that way. So even in nursing school, I still had a plan to go on to med school.
Hmm.
So I delved into nursing school, and it's so funny because when I graduated, my instructor was even talking about me going on to med school.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got a job at a academic center. I worked at the
Mhm.
University of Washington, and then I worked at a couple other. I've primarily worked in a lot of academic centers, so
Mm.
I worked with residents, which I love with a passion.
It's you're either one extreme or the other, for
Yes.
sure.
I mean, because it develops you as a person.
Yes,
You have to grow and you have to grow fast
true.
because working with people that are learning, like I'll never forget as an ER nurse, I had been a nurse just about 4 years when I stepped into a level 1 trauma center ER,
Mm.
which was an academic center
Yeah.
run by residents. And I
Wow.
was told, you're the lifeline for your patient. If you walk in and you see someone doing something they're not supposed to, if you have to lay your body across the patient, you do
Wow.
what you have to stop the resident. So I quickly learned that it was on me to learn how to manage not only the patient, but the
Hmm.
atmosphere and the whole dynamic of
Mm.
that patient's stay in the ER. And
Hmm.
it rapidly caused me to grow as a nurse, as a
Yeah.
person. And that's really what shapes my leadership. Again, from my very first job onward, that was 4 years in, and I'd already been working 4 years in academic centers and been put in situations where um, I just had to take ownership and take leadership. So it grew
Yeah.
my leadership skills rapidly. It also allowed me to look at residents and say, I don't want that lifestyle.
Yeah.
This was 20 years ago. And when I first started, this is almost 25 years ago, they didn't have rules like they do now for the hours that
Mm.
they worked.
Hmm.
And I would watch these residents just kill themselves. And I was like,
Mm.
I don't want that sort of lifestyle. Like, I
Yeah.
already work hard enough as a nurse. And so from then on, I really took in the what it was to be a nurse, like truly and holistically. Like, my job is to
Mm.
facilitate the growth, the healing, the development of my patients and their whole care practice. And I can do that just as effectively, if not more, as a nurse than I ever could
Absolutely.
as a surgeon. And So I made a choice. Like my husband and I said, I was on the path to apply for med school, and I just
Mm,
said, what do we want to do? And we wanted a family, and I wanted to be present with my family. And so
yeah.
I made the choice to stay as a nurse. And that's what I did. And because of my career in academics, academic centers,
Hmm.
it really catapulted me into leadership. And that's where I stepped into nursing leadership. From about year 4 on, I have been in some sort of leadership capacity in almost every job that I've had.
Oh, that's awesome. And that was always an area that I was an ER nurse also. And I knew right away that was not an area I wanted to go into because I saw how challenging that role is and how um, difficult it was when you're kind of stuck in the middle of wanting to advocate and know how important the bedside role is and really working for that, but yet also being stuck between administration and the challenges that come along with that and being pushed down. And so what was your experience as a nurse leader? I don't know if it was at all what I experienced, but it was hard. I did eventually get
Oh,
sucked in.
yeah, it was hard. It was what I thought um I wanted, and to some extent I really
Mhm.
did want it. I it it catapulted me into burnout faster than any other
Mhm.
role that I had played
Yeah.
as or done as a nurse. When I worked in the ER, I worked in an inner city level 1 ER. It was the most violent,
Mm.
just heavy place, but man, I loved it. It had everything in between. Like I've been assaulted there more times than I could
Mm.
count. We had just been abused as staff, like because
Yeah.
we were the only trauma center for 5 states, we couldn't say
Oh,
no. So
wow.
we had to like keep taking patients. But the camaraderie with those that I worked with was so strong. And
Mhm.
so even though it was hard and difficult for what we saw, what we did, what we interacted with every single day, it formulated who I was. And that's really what like brought forward my strengths into
Mhm.
people beginning to seek me out into leadership positions. So I saw from the inner city ER where we could impact nurses. And if I
Mhm.
stepped into leadership, how I could create an impact, or so I thought,
Yeah.
in nursing. So I stepped into leadership so early on in my career, and I loved it. I learned a ton, but it was the most thankless, hard
Mhm.
job I have ever had. And you get squished from the top, from the bottom, and everything comes out in between. And that's when I hit my lowest point as a nurse, was as a nurse leader, because I couldn't make administration happy. I couldn't make the staff happy. And then I was working at a place that they really began to challenge who I was as a person.
Mm.
Um, and I finally just had to draw the line of I will not misrepresent or lie to my staff. And if
Yes.
that's what you're going to ask me to do, I need to step down and walk
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So that's when I had to learn to develop my own resiliency, was as a nurse leader, to because if I was asking my staff to do things, I needed to be doing it myself,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So I really, after about 3 or 4 years in leadership, that's when I really stepped into self-development, stepped into coaching, stepped into bringing in concepts I had no idea would take me on the path it did,
Mhm.
but allowed me to build who I was, um, as a person, first and foremost, and then as a nurse, and then as a leader.
Mm.
And it was, while it was the hardest thing I've ever done, I'll never regret it because it's put me where I am today.
Yeah.
And I have amazing relationships with the staff that I have led over the years in all of the different areas I've led. I'm really, I just feel honored to have
Mhm.
walked that path, um, and to lead other people to create their best life possible as a nurse leader.
Mm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, the experience was, it was challenging, and it's thankless, right? I'll never forget one of the things I love, like to just say, to give perspective, is when my staff would say, well, that's why you get paid the big bucks. And I would look at them and I would say, if only you knew you actually make like $10 an hour more than I do. And
Yeah.
I'm here probably 20 hours more a week than you are. So I would just laugh and be like, you don't do this job because of the money. You do this
Right.
job because you believe in what you're doing and that
Yeah.
you can make an impact with
Absolutely.
the system. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had the blessing of having some amazing nurse leaders that are of the same mind as you, and also probably struggle with their own burnout. I know I did as well. And then I've also had nurse leaders that are so burned out, and maybe they had those intentions but couldn't find a way out of it.
Mhm.
And that ends up trickling down into the department. And so, what were some of the things that when you were in your own struggles and you said, you had to just figure out how to prioritize yourself before you became, prioritizing your nursing and your leadership, what were some of the things that helped you at that time when you were really struggling?
Mm. Ooh, yeah. So I am very physical. And so I like my release is exercise,
Mm,
especially like heavy weightlifting, or just like a huge
yeah.
challenge for me, right? So I'll never forget when I was really probably at my lowest point. I had a director of nursing who expressed enough that she was concerned, like she could see something in me, and
Mm,
I knew it, probably not to the extent that it really was. And when she asked me about it, it caused me to question a little bit. And so, and then she just simply asked me, "Does your husband know?" And I said,
mm,
"No, he doesn't know." And so she offered for me to share with him, which I did. And so that I only say that because that revolutionized, because he could see in me what I needed, and that was that physical outlet.
yeah.
So we went out and bought I was huge on cycling. And I had been in an accident the year prior, which had totaled my
Mm,
bike. And so he went out and bought me a bike, and I got on my bike and I started riding every day. I got back to working out. I got back to that release that I
yeah.
talk to clients about all the time. And I'll never forget the director of nursing looked at me the day I rode to work and she was like, "You're going to be okay."
Mm,
Okay. Now I know we're on the right track.
mhm, mhm.
And so I really had to find and what was important to me. So first it was how do I get out what I have to keep bottled in? Because as
Yeah.
leaders, you keep everything bottled in, everything. You can share nothing with nobody. And I needed a way out. I needed a way to get this out and the things that I was experiencing, seeing, and doing. And so started with exercise, and then I delved into learning and um, creating. I had a business at the time that I was a leader at this point in time. I had a
Mhm,
restaurant. So I delved a lot into creation as well. I believe
mhm.
creation is whether you're creating a garden, a painting, writing, whatever it is, you're bringing life to something when you see so much death and destruction in another
Yes.
area of life. So those were probably the two big things that catapulted me into building the resiliency and healing myself where I was so that I could bring that in
Mm.
back into my care as a leader for other people.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Because it just to give, somebody if they're listening to this, because I think I've got a handful of nurse leaders that I'm trying to help them get to this space. And so I hope this message lands for them. It is really hard to prioritize yourself anyways, just as a woman, let alone as a nurse, and then especially as a nurse leader, because you really are charged with caring for so many others.
Yeah.
Uh, and you're so worried about their well-being that your own really gets put on the back burner. But it's incredibly important, and you have to be able to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. That message is universal, but especially I'm talking to you nurse leaders right now. uh, it's really really important. And so to find your thing, that whether it's a physical outlet, a creative outlet, but something that's beyond work, beyond your people, beyond your family.
I think if I can add to that a little bit, one
Mhm.
thing that solidified my evolution as a leader was at that exact moment I took a survey of the leaders around me who
Mm.
I would consider my mentors. And they were all amazing people. but they were in the same boat I was in. And that struck me. And all of a sudden I looked around and I was like, hold on a second. If we are all the same way and we are all just as burnt out, I mean, on call 24/7 and like getting called in the middle of the night. And if you didn't respond to go in to pick up a shift or it got crazy, like it was, that was what was measured as the leader. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
So what really revolutionized was when I looked around at people and they were all the same as me. And again, I always love to push the boundaries.
Yeah.
I love to push limits and see what's possible. And so I had to say, if my eyes are on them, that means eyes are on me as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And that shifted because all of a sudden I was like, I feel like to be a leader, I have to live up to these mentors that I'm like looking after,
Mm-hmm.
but their life isn't any better than mine
Mm.
as far as balance and all of that.
Right.
So one thing I've always carried with me, and I share with my coaching clients that are leaders, is eyes are on you 24/7. Is this what you want your staff to mimic? Is this what
Right.
you want those you're leading to mimic? Do you want them to be sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night? Do you want them to be on call 24/7? Do you want them to be living this way?
Right.
Because if you can set up boundaries, you can teach them boundaries, and you will have a healthy department all the way around.
Yes.
That is what catapulted and really shifted my view as leaders. And that's when I began to stand up as a leader and stand out more, especially for the staff, because
Yeah.
it was so important and so
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important to model what you want others to do. We can really only control ourselves, but if we're showing them the way, it helps, it gives them permission of sorts of like, hey, it's okay to take care of yourself. And look, I'm doing it too. It's hard. It's not easy, but it's really important. And here's a couple of ways maybe you might be able to do it.
Yeah.
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 That's great. So, at what point did you start sliding out of nursing leadership and into coaching?
Um, so I had been working in a different inner city ER as a nurse leader, and wow, my mind was blown on what I was seeing. This was probably the busiest, um, in terms of like the department itself was huge. We were greater than a football field in size, and there was such a disconnect in that
Mhm.
from like the VPs all the way down to the frontline staff. Each level was a huge disconnect. And I was a leader one night, and I was a leader in the department. And one night, for this was right before Christmas, for the third time that week, we had lost. We had two pediatric trauma codes. We're not a pediatric
Mm.
center, and then the third one was we had a infant that we couldn't rescue and that we couldn't resuscitate. And this, I had been there for every single one of them. And this one we worked on for 90 minutes.
Mm.
Like it was awful. Though for everybody it was awful. And I looked around at the staff, and when we were done and I wanted to debrief with them, I had already begun stepping into coaching in different aspects.
Mhm.
And they all just looked at me like, we're good, laughed, and went on their merry way.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I stopped and I was like, no, you're not. You have no idea that if you don't process this now, 5, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to come back and these visions of what you did tonight, what we did, what we saw are going to come back and they're going to impact you.
Mhm.
And so it was at that moment I was like, something has to change. I'd been
Yeah.
trying to make changes in the department, and I've been shut down from every level of upper leadership. And so I finally just had to make a choice. And it literally was that night.
Mm.
Something needed to be different. And I, within that week, had put in my resignation, and I transferred out of the ER and into a outpatient case management job, just so
Mhm.
I could heal and see what it was I
Yeah.
needed. And that's when I began to step into coaching and took coaching back to the
Mm.
leadership, and took it back to healthcare to say there's got to be a different way.
Yes. Yes.
This is going to crumble. If we don't change your healthcare system, your staff is going to crumble, and we are going to have a huge population of people, not only patients, but workers that are sick, that are depressed, that have mental illness, that have substance abuse, because all we keep doing is pushing down. And
Yeah.
there's a better way than just pushing down our feelings and emotions of what we deal with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I transitioned out of that and into coaching.
Mm. Yeah. And we see that. We see that it's got worse since COVID.
Yeah.
And we are actively seeing people, nurses, disintegrating. I mean, just in front of our eyes, leaving not just an organization, but leaving the profession.
Yeah.
And it's been this buildup for years. It wasn't just COVID. That's just, I think, what the
That's
straw
the
that broke the
tipping point.
camel's back, or the
Yep.
tipping point, or whatever they call it. Yeah.
Yep.
Because it was like, and now I think we're starting to see the top leaders really start to recognize that, okay, we knew this was a problem, but now we can't ignore it yet. We can't ignore it anymore either. Like, we have to put money towards this. We have to develop staff. We have to find a way to support them. And other than just saying, here's the number for EAP.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's like, yeah, thinks that's nice, but that might take me 6 to 8 weeks to get set up with a therapist. And I need help now, and not
Yeah.
just help in the moment. Like, debriefing is so critical, even when we try to pretend like it doesn't matter, because especially as ER nurses, ICU, we tend to just like, we're fine. Got to get on to the
Yes.
next thing.
Yeah.
And because we're trying, just literally in the moment, trying to make it through our shift. But you're so right that stuff just catches up with you over time. Especially, it just really takes its toll. And so we're in this space, like, trying to help people figure out a better way to take
Mhm.
care of themselves, to help our profession survive and thrive.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's so needed. And like, I'll never forget, and this was when I first stepped into the ER. So this was probably a
Mhm.
good 15
Mhm.
years ago. And again, inner city ER, which it was the county hospital. So we saw the worst of
Mhm.
the worst, both in like how sick people were, but also like just humanity. And I remember like having 3 trauma codes and a pediatric trauma code. And finally the chargers coming in after that one and been like, how come this isn't bagged up and gone yet? You have another one coming in. And I finally looked at her and I was like, what about me?
Yeah.
And she said, there's no time for you.
Oh.
And I looked at her, and she is an absolute dear friend of mine. And so I knew it wasn't her. Like, what was she going to do? She's like, I need a bed. Like, we have more people coming. But that's what really struck me as like, that's what's wrong with our system. Okay,
Mm.
yes, we need a bed. Yes, we have to care for these traumas that are coming in. We have to care for these emergencies. But we also need to create systems and processes to help us deal through. Because what I was
Right.
also told there was, if you're having a hard time with what you're seeing and doing, you need to get out.
Mm.
And I'm like, that's just not true. Like,
Right.
I'm dang good at what I do. But I think we're taught in nursing school, you can't be personal. You
Mm.
can't get attached. You can't have feelings, because if you do, you're a bad nurse.
Mm.
And that's just not true. But that's what we've built on for
Right.
so many years. And that's what our healthcare system is built on. And it's now breaking those chains. And those
For
chains are
sure.
going to be, it's just like generational change when you're trying to create um, change and break, whether it's alcoholism or abuse or
Mhm.
divorce or poverty in your family. We are now experiencing that in healthcare. And to
Yep.
break the generational chains that have been held onto for so long is going to take massive action. And I think that's where nurse coaching steps in,
Beautiful.
especially with what we are rising up with, the amount of people that are stepping into nurse coaching and the amount of people that are stepping up and saying, no, not anymore. You can't do this anymore. There is a better way. Let me show you. And
Yes.
that's what I love to be on, is that side of the healthcare system to create that change. It doesn't mean it's easy, and it
Right.
doesn't mean that everybody wants to hear it, but it's true. And when it
Yes.
does take place, what happens is it's just truly epic.
Oh, I just got chills. Yes, to all of that. It's it's exciting to be a part of, because it feels like we can actually make a difference And that's why we got into nursing. And in most cases, why we love it
Yeah.
is because like that connection with another human, whether that's our patient or our coworker or our leaders or our whatever, our clients, but being able to make a small impact, and those little small impacts over time we'll start to see that big shift, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It creates that ripple effect that I always talk about,
Mm-hmm.
that you
Mm-hmm.
have no idea what your action today will have on future generations, future, but even like future patients, future
Yes.
clients, the system itself, just through like a single conversation, right? It's how we even begin. I feel like we're having to start all over again in healthcare to even begin to teach, how do you even converse with
Yeah.
people? How do you converse with staff, with coworkers, leaders to staff? Like, and we've gotten so disconnected and so disjointed, and COVID only made that worse, and we haven't come back to it. We've
Right.
all like siloed ourselves out, and teaching people to care again, teaching people
Mm-hmm.
to love again, and why we did this, why did we step into this, and that will shift healthcare
Right.
dramatically as we begin to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So tell me about some of the work that you're currently doing.
Yeah, so I currently coach primarily one-on-one. I've done group coaching in the past and I love it, but my passion is truly one-on-one. And I combine high performance. I'm a certified high performance coach
Mm.
as well as a board certified nurse coach. So I combine those two together to help people create their most vibrant, thriving life, in whatever capacity that is. So when we talk about high performance, it's about tapping into that hidden potential inside of you
Mm-hmm.
so that you can create the life that you want. So when we go back to talking about healthcare and nurses, like, you can have a healthy, thriving life and be phenomenal as a nurse in a system. And so I help people kind of bridge that gap, and step into all that they are called to live into.
Mm. Yes. And I've certainly been on the receiving end of your powerful coaching. So I'm always very grateful for that, because it's that, we kind of feel like we're supposed to choose, I guess, sometimes,
Mhm.
of like either we can do really great in life, or we can do great with work or business, but to try and like, no, we can actually, and I hate the word balance because it's not realistic, but like,
Mhm.
being able to learn how to both have a successful and happy and fulfilled life, which also includes work or your business or all of that. But you can kind of have it all. It just might be a little bit more in one area, a little bit less in one area, just kind of depending on where you're at.
Yeah, and it's what I want to say is that's possible. I love how you're like, I don't like the word balance because it's not. And I wouldn't say that like it's always 100% balance, but this is
Yeah.
what I love high performance about, is high performance is about taking all areas of your life, and instead of having the pendulum swing all the way this way
Mm.
for my business and leave everything else in the dust. With my clients, we focus on business, but we focus on life and energy, and so the pendulum stays in the middle here. So it swings. So it's not like perfectly balanced, but it's not
Yes.
so far one way or the next. And like, there's nothing more invigorating to me when I hear my clients say, I feel 20 years younger. Like, I don't know what you've
Oh,
done, but my life is radically changed. Like, I balance. Like, it's so funny. I've had a couple of them.
incredible.
I have an extra hour in my day. Is that normal? It's because you're bringing your life back into full circle.
Yeah.
You've cared for everything, that's what you're getting back in this time with me, is learning how to do that. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. I've never like had this before, and I could just sit there and not feel guilty about it. And I'm like, that's exactly
Yes.
what we're working towards. So
Beautiful.
it is bringing it's gonna still swing based on what you're working on, but it's not the dramatic swing.
Yes.
It stays in that middle balance there.
Yes, that's definitely something I've been working on. Because it does feel like sometimes it's like, ping ponging. And I'm like, no, yeah, that stability of like, I can shift over here and work on this, and I can shift here and work on that. But then I come back to kind of my center grounding balance of And yeah, that extra time is so lovely. It is, but that guilt, oh my gosh, you did
Yeah.
kind of nail that, because like by default we feel guilty if we're not doing something.
Yeah.
So learning how to be
Mhm.
and rest is super important.
Yeah, it is, right? And we forget how to do that, and then we feel like we're if I'm doing that, then I must not be doing something else. And
Hmm.
that's yeah. So when you're in what I do, the work that I do, it allows people to care for all areas so that you have that extra time. And pretty soon it's not just an hour today, it's an hour every day of the week. And you get this
Yeah.
and you're like, wow, like I can just be with my family, I can be with my friends, I can go out with whoever, the girls or have a time just for me. And I don't feel like I'm sacrificing something else to do that.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And that
Yeah.
when you can get to that level, that's where I say your life is full, it is vibrant, it is thriving because you've created this atmosphere that allows you to be all that you're meant to be.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening in and they're like, I just can't even imagine being in that place because my life is so chaotic right now. What are a couple little small tips, tricks you would recommend for them to kind of get started so that they can eventually get to that point? What are some things they could start with?
So I would probably say if you're listening in and you're like, I can't even see where I would put this in. So first, eh, focus and clarity are the first two things. But before we even get there, I want to say, see what's important in your day. So productivity is really important. And that's what causes us to be out of balance. So
Hmm.
here is two tricks that I give people that begins to revolutionize their day. So the first is when you wake up in the morning, an hour to you. That doesn't mean you don't do anything else, but what it means is you're not picking up your phone, you're not answering text messages, you're not answering emails, you're not doing anything other than the first hour of your day is for you to give back to you and think in that hour, think through what's important to happen today. What do I need to accomplish? Who do I want to be? I believe you need to live by intention. So you're
Hmm.
always setting your intention for the day. Otherwise, you let life just tackles you over and you're
Yes.
always reacting. So if the first hour you can take, and if you're a leader, I tell leaders this all the time. Nobody knows you're awake. You
Right.
do not have to answer a text message. You do not have, unless somebody is dying in this moment, you don't have to answer that.
Correct.
Give that hour to you because here's why. You end up living in a proactive way in your day where if you wake up and the first thing you do is answer a text message, answer your emails, look at that, you've set your day up to be reactive, which means
Yes.
you're not in control of your life. You're constantly reacting to everything. So the first tip is spend the hour of your day on you and what you need in that day. It sets your mindset, it sets your mood, it sets your day up to be
Hmm.
able to proactively respond to what happens during the day. The next thing I can say, especially for leaders, time, timers. If you're sitting down to your computer, if you're doing an activity, if you're answering emails, writing protocols, whatever it is, a 50-minute timer.
Okay.
Set a 50-minute timer when you start a task, and you have 50 minutes all in on this. So again, as speaking to nurses specifically, unless the code's going off overhead and you have to go respond to that, nothing interrupts that 50 minutes. You dive all in on that. It is amazing what happens. When I first started doing this, I tripled what I could do in 50 minutes just by knowing I like don't pick up my phone, don't
Yeah.
answer an email, don't do anything. But I literally I figured it all out. And in 50 minutes, I tripled what I could do because I knew that's the amount of time that I had. To do that, 50 minutes goes off, get up, walk away for 2 minutes, clear your mind,
Okay.
reset yourself, come back and whatever the next task is. Transitions are important, but I even think before then. So
Yeah.
when you get to your next task, set another 50 minutes because you're taking care of what's essential in the day. It will all get taken care of and you're going to be way more productive because otherwise we sit there for 2 hours, have done a quarter of what we could have done because we're so distracted with everything
Yes.
else that we don't get it done. So those would
Yes.
be the two biggest things that I would say could, especially for leaders, but really anybody can revolutionize your day, is to be intentional
Beautiful.
with what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes when we're multitasking, we think we're getting more done, but we're really not, because then we're like bouncing back and forth and we're trying to get caught up on what we're doing and get refocused. And then by the time we do that, we're already like squirreling to something else.
Yeah.
So I've been working more and more on time blocking. But then like, sometimes I literally have to put like a sticky note on my computer of like what I'm working on, because then my instinct is to like grab my phone or to do something that I'm like, it catches my eye and I go, nope, nope, I'm working on this right now. And I have to keep refocusing myself on it because my instinct is to go do a million things at the same time. It's hard.
Yeah. It is really hard. And because we're very distracted people, a very distracted country, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're told to multitask. And
Yeah.
multitasking is the worst thing you can do for productivity in all honesty and reality. And there's research to prove this as
Yes.
well. But multitasking drastically plummets your productivity, which that's going to drastically plummet your happiness, your fulfillment, your joy, because you feel like you're never getting anything done.
Yes. So true. So true.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Those are some really good tips and so much tangible takeaways, I think, from our episode today. So, in our last few minutes, I just want to see, is there anything that's on your heart that you want to share with our community today?
Well, first and foremost, I just have to express gratitude. Gratitude, one, for you for putting this podcast
Mhm.
together, for not for me, but for everybody, because
Thank you.
nurses are amazing people who are self-sacrificing, who give so much of themselves and don't uh, often recognize the impact that they have. So
Yeah.
first and foremost, I just want to give gratitude for you and for everybody out there.
Thank
All
you.
of the nurses out there that are putting themselves aside to take care of other people.
Mhm.
Coupled with that, I want to say, what is one thing you can do to give back to you today? Because you are just as important, if not more, than the person in front of you that you're taking care of, the people around you that are beside you. And what would it take for you to take 5 minutes to give back to you today and praise yourself, thank yourself, and just enjoy 5 minutes for you today?
Mm,
So
absolutely.
say thank you. Thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity for many nurses to share their stories and get out what they do, and for the nurses that are doing such an amazing job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, your message is like, I think, my soapbox too, of just even 5 minutes of just giving back to yourself, filling up your own well. You can you can give more to other people, surprisingly, because you're not feeling drained and resentful and frustrated. But it's okay to give to ourselves and to give ourselves a little grace. Thank you for that message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank
Well, thank you again. It's been lovely chatting with you. I'm so happy to have had you on, and we'll catch everybody next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.